Well, Mr. Alexander, it is always a pleasure to chat with you. How's life as you hang out in Bozeman getting ready for a football game?
Well, it's kind of snowy and cold, so, that certainly curtails the golf. But, boy, snow shoveling is certainly on the boom.
Yeah, exactly. I heard it's not exactly nice today. It's sunshine, but it's like 31, some wind, makes it a little chilly, but it's definitely not what you guys have back home.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, I was thinking that today when I was out that imagine if it were playoff time or something here and you had to play a football game. It would not be much fun. Boy.
What was the coldest game you ever announced?
That would be the University of Idaho with Dennis Erickson came into what was then the old Sales Stadium. That is the only time ever that I had the window in the booth shut, although it was not all the way. I had enough room to stick the crowd mic out and put a soft drink cup over it, plastic cup over it, to cut down the wind because the wind was blowing. The field was hard. And I remember interviewing Coach Erickson down on the field before the game, and I asked about the weather, and he was very profound. He said, well, both teams have to play in it. So with that, I thought, okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right.
It was miserable. There were literally very few, if any, people left in the stadium by the time it was over. I mean, it was cold, wind blowing. It was kind of halfway sunny. I mean, it's kind of bright and that. But it was just terrible. I mean, ridiculous.
We're talking with former MSU play-by-play announcer Dean Alexander, whom the press box, half of which is named after, Ken Nicholson the other. This is an exciting year, and I know you're not making the trip down to Dallas or the Frisco area, but you go to all the Bobcat games. What was different? When did this team turn special in your eyes this year?
Boy, I don't know. I think maybe it was just after a few games. You could kind of see something in there that it was just kind of starting to gel. Although actually, if I went back to the first game against Wyoming, I mean, that would tell you something right there. Because you wondered, I did anyway, are they that good, or is Wyoming not good, or are they both pretty good and going to have pretty good seasons? Well, obviously, I think the Bobcats really, for their level, were better than Wyoming was for its level.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, you look back on it now and you're like, oh, that's a game that probably slipped through the hands a little bit. And then, of course, you have the change at quarterback after the Grizz game. Were you surprised by that?
Definitely. Two things on that. One, well, let me back up a little. I figured there would be some adjustments after the Grizzly game because McKay just had a terrible game. It's like he just wasn't into it, like he wasn't seeing anything and he panicked and wasn't good. And I figured, boy, they've got some work to do. Okay, so I thought we might see a little bit more of Tommy, that they would maybe work that in there as they've done during the season, but more so. And then you get to thing number one that McKay has quit and left, and thinking, now they're forced to go with Tommy. And so they get him in there, and guess what? Tommy was ready. I mean, that was, that was the ultimate. And so you think the first game, well, maybe he caught the other guys a little by surprise, and so maybe you'll give him that a little bit, but quite obviously that he was ready, and the Bobcats with this next man up stuff, and that has worked in many of their positions. But you get him in there, and so then you start checking back on what he did in Butte in high school, and it's the same thing. That was the thing. The guy was in command. He could throw it, he could run, he was smart, and he just pulled it off. And, of course, when you have an old Bobcat who's pretty darn good himself, Eric Gray, coaching him in high school, you got to figure that the kid's got some football talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Joined by Dean Alexander on the Mike Miller State Farm Hotline talking Bobcat football. How can you, it's only been 3 games, but where do you put Tommy in the history of Bobcat football?
Well, let's go back 84, last time they won the national title. Let's just go back to that and look at Kelly Bradley when he was a total unknown, and they came in and had a new offensive coordinator, going to put in a new offense, and he put this kid in from Zumbrota, Minnesota, who, when the Bobcats signed him, as I recall, they didn't sign him till like July, of his team. So he went through all the signing periods. They bring this kid in, and I think probably we could compare that because we saw Bradley just get better every week, and then he had the command, and by the time they got to the title game, there he was. And I think that might be the same with Tommy. Tommy, obviously, with fewer games, but my goodness, the kid hasn't made a bad decision. I mean, he's in control, and when you play the way that he has, you have the confidence of your teammates. And golly gee, he has that. And to say the least, I mean, this team has found a way all year long, and you don't really panic in any situation. Because they don't, and of course, head guy on the sideline, Vegan. I mean, Jiminy Christmas, you look over there at him, and he's just having a nice day there, just solid as it can be. He's not grabbing face masks or yelling at the refs or doing anything. He's coaching the football team, and he's on even keel. That's the way his team plays.
Yeah, he definitely is. Dean Alexander joining us, Jason Walker Show, announced a lot of Bobcat athletic events over the years, and I know I'm sure 84 is probably the one that stands out football-wise for you, and maybe that game in 02 up in Missoula.
Yes, that I was talking about that to somebody today on that that was the one where you're over it, the streak, to say the least, and then you get the weather, and you got a good team, and you got Lule back there and Junior Adams. So on, and I mean, it's a knockdown, drag out, and then you come up with that one play, and then you're thinking, at least I was in my mind, could this be it? Could this be the difference? And it held up, and they won it, and that was, that would be up there with the '84 game in a different way, but it's certainly one of the best ever. When they started Lule as a freshman, I was commuting. I was in Billings. And coming to do the game, we go down to Pocatello, and I'm interviewing Coach Kramer before the game, and he says, "Have you met Travis Lule?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Travis." And he comes over, and this guy with a very quiet voice and a real soft handshake, and that was it. I thought, okay, this is your quarterback, because you're used to a lot of quarterbacks being really strong personality. I mean, Kelly Bradley, for one, a very strong personality, but in a presence. But Lule had it. I mean, that quiet confidence. And I think going back to touchdown Tommy, that I think he has that too, that quiet confidence that I am the leader. We're going to get this done, and ain't nobody going to panic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Travis, I talked to him with his induction in June at the Montana Football Hall of Fame down in Billings. And he's still quiet and still shy. But he still commands the room. Yeah,
he's an incredible guy. I mean, he just did it all for the Bobcats. But he was a great. And as you look back on those, most of them, like he had some pretty good stats. And Brad, he didn't know much about it, coming in. They just take over. And the thing with me with Tommy, as I look at that, I'm thinking, goodness, you got 3 more years with this kid. How good is he going to be in this senior year up here? It's just incredible. But then you can look the other way and think a lot's going to be expected. But I think he's probably used to that because, he's a starter, I think, his sophomore year in high school in Butte. So everybody expects it, and he's delivered.
Dean Alexander, our guest here, Jason Walker Show. Take me through that '84 title run. I mean, I was 9 years old. I remember going to games that year with my dad, but I didn't know anything at the time. I probably still don't know anything now, but when you look back at that run and that magical run all the way to the championship, what stands out?
I think, they were 2-2 to start it out, and I remember the loss at Eastern Washington. The first one, you win Mesa State, and that's okay because now you've won as many as you did the year before. You don't get too excited. It's Mesa State, nothing against them. Then you go to Eastern, and on the bus, offensive coordinator Bill Dietrich asked me and my color man Paul Ellis what we wanted the first play to be, and we said throw the ball. So anyway, Bradley passed for 60-some times, and they lost. You think, well, then they go down to Idaho at the Kibbe Dome, and they beat them. So now you're doing something. But then they come home and lose unbelievably in Reno Sales to Idaho State. You think, oh, well, then it started because they go 3 games in a row where they get over 40 points, and they get Weber and Nevada and Portland State. And then Boise State, Jesse Jones with that run down the sidelines on the far side where he just bowled guys over like he was in a bowling alley and got all the way down there. And they beat Boise State. They beat the Grizz, and then they blow up Northern Arizona. And so then you've now played through your league. What a great year. Here you go. And you're starting to think now there should be something more. I mean, there should be some playoffs coming. But you're going to Fresno, and that was D1, now FBS, coached by former Bobcat coach Sweeney. And you get down there, and you have that big play that they had so many games with Big Nell catching the pass and just taking them with him into the end zone. And they beat Fresno State, and bingo, you're in the playoffs. And then you get Arkansas State, and you get a home game, which was fantastic. And I think the weather got to those guys, and they kind of in the third and fourth quarters, up there at the stadium, it can get kind of brisk, particularly when you're talking December. And so then the biggie of the biggies, and to me, this was the national title game. We didn't know it at the time, but Rhode Island, highly ranked, a quarterback that just threw it all over the lot and could. And, I mean, here you go. And Bobcats going along, and here he is all of a sudden got him down on the 3-yard line. And it's the end of the dream. It's the end of everything. And it's over. Well, not quite. Joe Roberts steps in, gets the interception at the 3-yard line, and goes the other way. And then you're in the national title game down in Charleston, South Carolina against Terry Bradshaw's alma mater, Louisiana Tech. And Louisiana Tech didn't figure out what they were up against. Number one, that defense from Bobcats was just tremendous, as it had been all year. And then you had a quarterback who could and would throw it, had guys that could catch it. And although it ended up 19-6, it really wasn't that close. I mean, fellows sacked their quarterback 5 times. It was just something, an exercise in futility for them. And doing the game, you could kind of see it early, and you don't want to get too excited. You know yourself, do a play-by-play, but how it's going to end out, you don't want to do that. But you could kind of see that maybe this looks like this might be the real deal, and these guys are going to win it all. And of course they did. And it was a good game, but not a heck of a game like Rhode Island. I think Rhode Island was probably the best. They were ranked 2 in the nation. I think Louisiana Tech was like number 9. So, that was great. But that was the year. That was a magic carpet ride. You didn't expect much, and it just developed into, whoop, look at this. This year would be somewhat similar in the fact I'm not saying you didn't expect much. You knew they'd be pretty good. But once they got it rolling, because you have a new head coach and you're not sure, but once they got it rolling, there it was. I mean, there's some similarities there in a different way. As Yogi would say, they're similar in a different way. But, I mean, you know what I mean. Yeah.
It's deja vu all over again, Dean.
Yeah, amen, yeah.
Dean Alexander.
Nobody eats there. It's too busy.
There you go. Jason Walker Show. We're joined by Dean Alexander, the legend. How many times did you win Montana Sportscaster of the Year?
Oh, I don't know, maybe half a dozen or so.
Okay.
You got me there.
No, I don't. I've lost more than you, I think. But anyway, aside from all of that, they're supposed to announce the winner this week. But
yeah.
as we chat and continue a few more questions, Montana connections, Montana kids. You look back at that '84 team. Can you compare that and the Montana strong to this year's team?
Well, you talk about touchdown Tommy from Butte. Well, we had Mr. Touchdown, number 18, back in the day on '84, and that was Kelly Davis, a sophomore out of Butte. So, I think he caught 9 touchdowns or more. I forget what the total number was, but that was a pretty good Butte connection there, to say the least. I think he contributed big time to that. You had Zach Peters, who was backing up Lonnie Burt. Lonnie was from Helena, nose guard, and Zach was a senior also, and he was from Butte. So that's some pretty good representatives from Butte on that one, if you want to make some comparison.
Sure.
And then you got the guys from smaller towns in Montana and all that. I mean, it's all kind of there. They had what I would say a pretty good core of guys from Montana. and MSU does too. And MSU, if you want to sit down and count them up, there's a big number of kids playing for the Bobcats now that are from Bozeman, and that tells you a lot about the football program in Bozeman too, at Bozeman High.
Yeah, no question. Of course, one of the big ones on this year's team. He's won an award almost every single year at different positions, and he's also the Defensive Player of the Year this year in the FCS. Troy Anderson from Dillon. You've seen a lot of great players, Dean, at Montana State pass through the locker room, pass through Reno H. Sales to Bobcat Stadium. Where does Troy Anderson rank in the annals of the history there?
Well, he's always going to have to be mentioned with the greatest, because I have to, I've thought about this because, okay, so you go with Troy Anderson, the offensive player. I mean, he performed. Look at what he did, as quarterback and running back, okay? But then you figure, well, wait a minute. He also played on the other side of the ball and was just as good. We haven't had that. I mean, we had Bill Kohler was a big-time defensive player, and you had Ryan Johnson as a running back, as an example. We've touched a little bit on the quarterbacks, the Iron Tumbleweed, Don Haskell, way back there, so on. But you look at Anderson, number one, he has the size, and he has the speed. I remember seeing him in a couple of meets in high school as a sprinter and could not believe it, how big he was and how fast he could run. And then we've seen it here on the football field with his breakaway speed, that once he gets past the line, good luck. I mean, anybody in the league could catch him. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So whenever, and you're going to have people from different eras talk about the greatest Bobcat players and who it was and who's this, and he played in the pros or whatever. But you're going to have Troy Anderson up there all time with any of them, and I think it just depends on what your favorite years were as a Bobcat fan as to who you might believe is your favorite. But I've been watching Bobcat football, obviously, since 1973, so I'm going to be pushing 50 years before long, and in 50 years, I can't tell you anybody that was any better. I can tell you some that were as good in their way, but they were one side of the ball. He's two sides of the ball.
Yeah, he's just an absolute animal, and one of the nicest guys, too, that is playing in the game of football at Montana State. You mentioned 1973, but going back to that 1976 season as well, did you know in 84 that there was, was there that comparison to the 76 where it was, that special, that, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just so special in 84, but that 76 team was just as special.
Yeah, it was. That was a tough football team. Paul Dennehy, the quarterback, and they were known for just running the ball and running over people. Paul didn't throw the football a lot, but that was Sonny Holland's style, and quite obviously it worked very well. But they were just tough. And I remember the Akron game where when they were introducing the guys, how they have each one get in front of the camera and say their name, and they're kind of half giggling. So I thought, you guys don't have a clue. You are in for one long afternoon, because those guys played, they came at you, everybody to the ball, as they talked about. Or there just wasn't one guy making the tackle. It seemed like you're tackling the front two or three rows of the stands were in on the tackle too. I mean, it was something. I mean, they just literally raised hell, to say the least.
When you talk coaches in Montana State, obviously, Sonny Lubick, Sonny Holland, Dave Arnold, those guys that have won. And Jeff Choate built this team, but Brent Vegan took it to the championship game. And a lot of, the similarities, different styles as well. But, Choate has been such a big influence on this team. But I loved what he said, Dean, last week in an interview. He goes, I can't say that if I'm still the coach that we're in the championship game. Do you think that Montana State's there if Jeff Choate's still the coach?
Boy, I saw that, Jason, and I asked myself the same thing, and that's something literally we'll never know.
Right.
But we have kind of contrasting styles, as head coaches. Vegan, I think, he's just kind of laid back a little more. Probably laid back is probably not the proper term, but it's different styles. And I think Choate is right, and that's one thing all coaches deal with. And that is after you've coached a group for a couple, 2-3 years, sometimes they're not as attentive at certain times as they have before because it's the old, we've heard this song and dance before. Whereas you got the new guy coming in, and that's a question mark too. Are they going to pay attention? Well, obviously the way he did it and a few of the changes that he made, he got them to buy into it. And I'm not saying that he got any extra out of them, but he got it all out of them, you know. And it's a tough comparison to make. It's not fair to say that Schote wouldn't have done it, you know, whatever. But you give him credit for getting the guys in here. If you go back to '84, the seniors there were on their third coach because Sonny Lubick basically recruited all of them.
Right.
You know, and then the second year, they had Doug Graber in there, and then you got Arnold who gets one win, and then he's back for his second year. So that was a little different thing too. You know, you could have said, well, you know, what if Sonny had stayed? Well, who knows?
Right.
What if Graber had stayed? Who knows? But the thing is, you got to give credit to the guy who got it done, and that would be Vegan in this case, and going back to Dave Arnold. I mean, they were the guys, because if they had lost it and hadn't done anything, you wouldn't be pointing the finger or saying, you know, whatever. So,
Sure.
So that's the deal. Schote was right. I mean, I agree with him on that. You will never know. You don't know, but he had a great run here, and he gets credit for all that. But you'll never know if he could have been the guy that took him there this year.
As Bobcat fans, as guys that have grown up around that program, and I hate to say this, but was that Grizzly loss the best thing that happened to this Montana State team this year?
I thought that at the time, and that took guts as a head coach, where you took that and he didn't go off the deep end and go nuts, you know, the world is ending and all this, so on. And he went to the deal and he took a look at it and he made the decision, and that was you take your starting quarterback and bench him and bring in a green freshman. And that was beyond belief in terms of guts. You know what that could have done? A lot of people think it could have gone the other way and you'd lost every game you played after that. But it worked out the opposite way, so now you're about half a genius. But, I mean, it took guts to make that decision. You know, I mean, come on. A lot of coaches wouldn't have made that decision. They'd have tried to make some adjustments at quarterback or have him do something different or whatever. But just to go that way, wow. That, in effect, because, yeah, we'll remember the Grizzly loss. There's no doubt about that. You don't forget those. But I think that has been buried way deep down with what has happened since that game. I mean, you beat the number one team in the nation on their home field. You beat South Dakota State, who was favored coming in here, etc. And here you are. You're in the title game.
Any advice for Zach Mackey, the play-by-play guy, and Dan Davies and Mikey Ryder and the crew?
Nope, they do a fine job. You know yourself when you're doing it. They're not me. I'm not them. I'm not you. You're not me. We all have our own style and do it in what fits, and it works well for them. And I'm happy for them that they get a chance to do it because I enjoy listening. But it's every probably play-by-play guy's dream that you get to do a championship game somewhere. And there they are. And, of course, Dan was on the team in '76 as a walk-on from Chinook. He was a coach in '84. And here he is finishing up his career of 40 years at Montana State, again, with the championship game. I'll tell you what, that's pretty doggone good.
That's a really good connection. I mean, everybody talks about the cowboy hats in '56 to this year, but you forget about Dan and the impact that he's had in Bobcat athletics overall.
Yeah, he has been there. You know, when he was working with me, and I'm the guy that brought him into the booth, when he was working with me, one of the big reasons, obviously the football knowledge and experience, that all counts, that's big. But working with me, and particularly on the road, that he knew boosters, ex-players, parents, Bobcats, so on and so forth, because of his long time association with Montana State University from first as a student and then on through. And that was always a plus because he always had some different things and helped me make the connection to various members of the Bobcat family. And if you want to know the real deal, going all the way back, one of the reasons he got into the booth, besides the football and all that, is when my son was 9 years old, there's a program up at MSU. You had to take a young grade school kid and mentor that kid as part of the curriculum. Well, Dan Davies, that's the first time I met him, and he mentored my 9-year-old son. That's how I got to know him, and what a hell of a guy he is. It is carried on through there. It's a long time, and he'll have a good time in retirement. He'll have to spend a lot of money buying me coffee, but he'll get used to it.
What's your handicap on the golf course?
Clubs and balls, normally. That's just pretty much is it. If I could play without those and just use the scorecard and the pencil, maybe I'd be in the 70s every round, but I just can't do it.
You'd be winning PGA tours all over the place.
Yeah. I love to play. As I tell people when I go out there, I play golf. That's it. Yep. I play. So if it's 102 or 92 or 85 or whatever it might be, I'm happy with that because I made the whole round I played and didn't run out of balls or lose any clubs.
Well, as a young announcer growing up, it was always a pleasure to listen to you, and then finally got the chance to work with you. I actually still have the very first play-by-play headset that I ever used that you so graciously gave me. Still has duct tape on it that you had, but the old cough button I remember as well. But I have always treasured that. I've treasured all the advice over the years, and it's been such an honor to know you and work with you and everything like that. What will be the score and who wins Saturday?
Let me look here. It's the 27-20, and the Bobcats will have the 27.
Well, I knew that was going to be you got to pick the Cats, right?
Yeah. There's no way. I've gone over the thing. I've seen North Dakota State play 2-3 times this year on TV. They're not the same North Dakota State. They're good. Don't get me wrong. They're good. But the Bobcats are better than they expect. I can tell you that. The Bobcats, they should be awake because the Bobcats just showed Sam Houston State and South Dakota State they weren't quite ready. They didn't think these guys could do that. And these guys play. As the coaches say, snap the whistle. You better bring your lunch pail with an extra sandwich because they're going to be there for you.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Real quick, how good is this defense in comparison to 84 and previous great defenses for the Bobcats?
They're up there with them. I don't know. 84 was a spectacular defense for the Bobcats, no doubt about it, with lots of big-time standouts. But I think this is a very workmanlike defense, and I think they've proven with what they've done with these teams, when it really is necessary to give a little more, they can do it. So they're up there. What I would say is they're probably a championship caliber defensive team. They're going to win it all. It's a defense that can do that for you, that can get you there with the opportunity to win it.
Well, Dean, like I said, I appreciate everything that you've done over the years, not only for Bobcats, but for me personally. And it's a great honor to chat with you on a couple of days here before a championship. Go Cats.
Yeah, amen. Jason, best of luck to you. Doing a great job, and root those Cats on to victory, will you?